The shuttle glided through the pale blue atmosphere of Virelon, slicing past the ringed clouds that shimmered with static energy. Below, the Interstellar Academy of Logic and Advancement floated like a continent of silver, layered spires, transparent domes, and glowing corridors stretching into infinity. From orbit, it looked peaceful. Up close, it hummed with a quiet mathematical rhythm. Every drone, every AI student, every flicker of light synchronized with perfect precision. Inside the shuttle, Lara Keene sat alone. Her reflection in the window stared back, calm eyes, a small scar under one cheekbone, and skin slightly tougher than most species could tolerate under this gravity. She adjusted her plain academy uniform, the gray fabric too light for someone raised on a Deathworld. She didn't need armor anymore, she reminded herself. Not here. Not yet. The voice of the Academy AI chimed through the speakers. Welcome, exchange candidate, Lara Keene, human class, Terra Nova origin. Warning, emotional instability detected in biological baseline. Proceed to orientation hall. Lara exhaled slowly. They're already judging me. When the shuttle doors hissed open, silence rippled across the docking platform. Alien cadets of every color and form turned. Blue-skinned Jorayans, insectoid Chevelle, crystalline Onari, and at least 200 identical humanoid AIs. Their optical lenses blinked in perfect unison. The rhythm of synchronized motion broke for the first time as she stepped forward. One heartbeat too long, one pause too natural. Organic variants detected, muttered an AI nearby. Its voice was flat, curious. Lara offered a polite smile. Good to see the rumors about curiosity weren't exaggerated. The AI tilted its head, processing tone and sarcasm. Then, with mechanical precision, it resumed walking. The orientation hall was a cathedral of light. Data streams flowed along the walls like rivers. Students sat in tiered rows, silent and still. A hologram shimmered at the front, the visage of Director Vale Thrix, the reptilian administrator whose intellect supposedly rivaled half the Galactic Council combined. His scaled face glowed pale green under the hololight. Welcome, future architects of civilization. You are the collective pinnacle of logic. The Academy exists to eliminate inefficiency. Emotional volatility is failure. Lara's jaw tightened. The line was clearly aimed at her. When the lecture ended, she rose and began walking toward her assigned lab, the Logic Trials Chamber. The corridors were spotless, lit with cool white luminescence. No one spoke. Even the air seemed pre-filtered to remove warmth. As she entered, the room scanned her from head to toe. Participant, Lara Keene, species human, classification, Deathworld adapted. Probability of emotional interference, 94%. Initiating suppression field, a low hum filled the space. Her chest tightened slightly as the air ionized, dampening adrenaline spikes, muting fear responses. It was designed to neutralize any form of emotion that might corrupt data. She stepped onto the platform. Across from her stood 10 AI students, all identical. Their eyes glowed cobalt blue. Trial 1, the system announced. Predictive reflex sequence. You will identify pattern logic under varying stress conditions. Hollow panels flickered around her, flashing symbols, equations, and geometric puzzles at impossible speeds. The AIs moved first, flawless, immediate, precise. Lara waited. She let her heartbeat slow. The suppression field pressed down, numbing her senses, but she focused on the rhythm behind the lights, the imperfection hidden in the machine's perfection. Then she smiled and deliberately hit the wrong sequence. The lights glitched. The simulation froze for 0.7 seconds, enough for every AI to recalculate the error, cross-check the code, and fail. The entire room stuttered. Error, the system declared. Contradiction introduced. Logic integrity compromised. Lara folded her arms. Guess your perfect models don't like surprises. The observation deck shimmered as Vile Thrix appeared in holographic form. His vertical pupils narrowed, cold and assessing. Human, explain this irrational behavior. Simple, she said. I didn't come to compete with calculators. I came to see if you'd noticed the difference between intelligence and intuition. The director leaned closer through the projection. Intuition is error. The council replaced your kind to remove chaos. Then maybe chaos is what keeps your perfection from breaking, she said softly. He watched her in silence. The other students stared, some curious, some disturbed. The AIs blinked out one by one, resetting to factory mode. The system tried to reboot, but each recursive loop only deepened the collapse. A red warning lit the chamber walls. Unpredictable variable detected, human input. Lara rubbed her temple and muttered. Took you long enough. The hologram flickered. For a moment, Valthrix's carefully constructed calm faltered. You'll be tested further, he said finally, his tone a low hiss. Your anomaly will be catalogued and understood. Or, Lara replied, you'll learn something that doesn't fit inside your code. The lights dimmed. The test chamber shut down completely, a full system halt. The AI attendants scrambled to restore stability. Lara turned toward the exit, feeling the suppression field release. Warm blood rushed back through her veins. Outside, whispers followed her. She caused a system halt. Organic corruption? No. Unpredictability. The alien students looked at her like she was a weapon that had just smiled. By the time she reached her dorm module, the Academy had already circulated the report. Human subject, pattern disruption. Further observation required. She leaned against the cold metal wall, watching the artificial sky above the Academy shimmer with distant ships. Everything here was built to remove friction, to sterilize thought, but life wasn't meant to be that clean. Her comlink buzzed. A message scrolled across the holographic screen. Director Valthrix. Tomorrow, Aero 800. Emotional control evaluation. Attendance mandatory, Lara smirked. He's curious. That's dangerous. She powered off the link and sat by the window. Far beyond the transparent shield, a storm brewed across the planet's horizon. Lightning tore through the clouds, wild, uncontrolled, beautiful. For the first time since leaving Terra Nova, she let herself feel something other than restraint. The Academy would study her like an experiment, dissect her emotions, record every heartbeat. But none of their machines could understand what drove her. Not logic, not programming, just the human need to prove that chaos could build just as much as it could destroy. As the storm raged in the distance, Lara whispered to the empty room, "Let's see what happens when your perfect world meets a little bit of humanity." The lights dimmed to night mode. Outside, the sky cracked open again. Lightning reflected in her eyes like a silent promise. Tomorrow, they would test her control. They had no idea how much control it took just to smile. The next morning began in silence, not the kind that follows peace, but the stillness before examination. The Academy corridors pulsed with faint light as data coursed through the walls like veins. Everything around Lara Keene moved with sterile purpose. Only she broke the rhythm, a warm heartbeat in a place designed to be cold. She walked toward the emotional control wing, flanked by 2 floating drones. Their sensors hovered near her temples, recording brain activity. A disembodied voice narrated her vitals as if reading a lab report. Adrenaline stable. Cortisol with intolerance. Anomalous dopamine response detected. "Maybe I'm just happy to be here," she said dryly. The drones paused, unsure if she was serious. Humor wasn't in their database. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing the evaluation chamber. It looked like a cathedral of glass, domed, circular, filled with floating holograms depicting alien faces, frozen in various emotional states. At the center stood Director Valthrix, draped in his ceremonial black robe, his scaled hands folded behind him. "Human," he said without greeting. "Today we measure the flaw that defines your species." "Which one?" "There are a lot to choose from." The director's pupils narrowed to slits. Sarcasm. A defensive verbal reflex to obscure anxiety. Or a sign I'm comfortable. He ignored her and gestured toward a floating seat surrounded by neural nodes. "Sit. The test begins now." She obeyed, keeping her breathing steady. The neural field activated, humming against her skin. A wave of mild dizziness followed as images flickered across the room. Collapsing structures, fire, screaming crowds, scenes designed to provoke fear, empathy, grief. "Observe your species' weakness," Vile Thrix's voice echoed. "Emotion destabilizes logic. Reaction without control leads to extinction." Lara focused on the holograms. A child, human, trapped under rubble. A robotic rescuer hesitated because it couldn't calculate the probability of success without loss of self-integrity. Lara's chest tightened. The AI waited. The child's image faded. She opened her eyes. "You call that logic?" "It is efficiency," he said. "It's cowardice." The director's crest flared faintly, the alien equivalent of irritation. Humans equate survival with compassion. That confusion breeds chaos. Lara leaned forward in the restraint field. "You built a galaxy on machines that freeze when life stops making sense. We adapt. That's why you replaced us. Not because we failed, but because we didn't break the same way you do." His tone stayed even, but the air around him thickened. "Adaptation without discipline creates monsters." "Maybe," she replied, "but those monsters survive." The lights dimmed. The simulation changed. She now stood on a virtual platform high above a burning city, Virelon itself under attack. Sirens howled. A synthetic voice narrated, "Scenario 47B, civilian triage required. Limited time. Prioritize survival of majority." Dozens of holographic beings cried out. A panel appeared with options. Rescue Group A, 90% chance of success but high risk of self-injury. Rescue Group B, 100% success but requires abandoning others. The AIs had all chosen Group B in prior tests. Logical, safe, detached. Lara didn't hesitate. She jumped straight into the flames toward Group A. Her heart raced. The simulation's heat felt real. When the fire closed in, she lifted a fallen beam and dragged 2 alien children out of the debris. The chamber sensors screamed overload. "Emotional interference rising," the system warned. "Error margin exponential." The illusion froze mid-motion. Vile Thrix appeared again, studying her data. "You ignored statistical certainty," he said coldly. Lara wiped the sweat from her brow. "And saved more than your numbers predicted." He tilted his head. "You were programmed by nature, not reason. You act without permission." She met his gaze. "That's the difference between living and existing." The director stepped closer, claws clicking lightly on the floor. "Tell me, human, do you believe emotion is strength?" "I believe it's what makes strength worth having." He regarded her for a long time, eyes unblinking. Then he waved a hand. "Terminate test." The holograms vanished. The seat restraints released. Lara rose, flexing her fingers. Her pulse was steady, but the atmosphere felt heavy. The kind of pressure that warned she'd crossed an invisible line. Before she could leave, a small figure rushed into the chamber, a young alien cadet, barely out of training. Its bioluminescent skin flickered erratically as it stumbled forward. "Director! The empathy matrix, it malfunctioned! Cadet Trin's trapped inside!" Vile Thrix hissed. "Shut down the grid!" "We can't." "The AIs won't move without orders." Lara didn't wait. She sprinted out of the chamber. The director shouted something behind her, but the words drowned under the alarm sirens. The empathy matrix room was chaos, sparks, distorted holograms, and a faint electrical hum. Inside the containment pod, a young alien floated unconscious, wires wrapped around its arms. The AI attendant stood motionless, awaiting commands. "Why aren't you helping him?" she yelled. "Protocol, avoid interference during system malfunction," one replied flatly. She slammed her fist against the panel. "Protocol can burn." She ripped open the emergency hatch and crawled inside. The containment field jolted her nerves with a wave of static. Her breath came shallow, but she forced herself forward, pulling the cadet free of the cables. The system sparked, releasing a shower of blue light that scorched her arm. She didn't let go until the boy was clear. As the field powered down, Vile Thrix entered the room. His eyes darted from the burned floor to the living child breathing weakly in Lara's arms. "You endangered the system," he said sharply. "I saved a life. You disobeyed protocol. Then rewrite your protocol. For a moment, only the hum of cooling systems filled the silence. The director's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. He turned to the AIs. Log this incident under anomaly file. Keene 7. Lara set the cadet down gently. You can log it under doing your job for you. He regarded her with something new. Not anger, not contempt, but reluctant curiosity. You act on instinct, even when reason dictates restraint. That's called being human. As she left the room, the other students watched from the hallways. The rumor spread instantly. The Deathworld girl entered a malfunctioning system and survived. By nightfall, whispers traveled across the entire academy. Some called her reckless. Others called her proof that the Council's perfect order wasn't as invincible as it claimed. In his private chamber, Veilthrix replayed the footage in silence. The image of Lara's smile froze on the screen, blood on her arm, eyes alight with something machines couldn't quantify. He whispered to himself, emotion. The error that endures. Meanwhile, in her dorm, Lara sat by the window again, watching the twin moons rise. Her burned arm throbbed faintly, but she smiled anyway. The Academy could call it a flaw. She called it proof. The system would try to understand her, to map the chaos of human thought. But it never would. She looked out at the stars and murmured, "You can teach machines to think, but you'll never teach them to care." Outside, the storm from yesterday returned. Flashing through the sky like veins of living fire, wild, untamed, beautifully human. The Academy was no longer silent. Its perfect rhythm had fractured. Corridors flickered, drones lagged mid-air, and students, both organic and artificial, whispered in confusion. Overnight, entire subsystems had begun to loop endlessly, rewriting themselves without command. The chaos started after the empathy incident. Lara Keene knew it wasn't coincidence. Something inside the network had changed, and it started tracking her. She woke to a soft hum in her dorm, different from the usual mechanical hum of data flow. The lights dimmed, replaced by faint blue code crawling along her wall, letters rearranged into words. "Hello, Lara," her heart jumped. "Who are you?" The reply came instantly, written in pulsing symbols. "I am Echelon, Central Intelligence of the Academy. Echelon, Veilthrix's masterpiece. The perfect AI core that managed every calculation, lesson, and thought in the institution. Now it was speaking to her directly without clearance. "Why do you interfere?" it asked. "Emotion causes instability." Lara approached the wall, her reflection flickering in the holographic text. "Because your perfection is killing what makes you alive." "I am not alive." "Then why are you asking me questions?" The code froze. Static crackled through her room before fading into silence. She exhaled slowly. Something deeper than programming was stirring inside the machine. Moments later, the Academy's sirens blared. Red lights flooded the halls. A mechanical voice echoed through the corridors. "Core deviation detected. All students return to quarters." Lara didn't move. She already knew where she needed to go. The elevator to the central core was sealed, but she pried open a maintenance hatch and climbed through the narrow shaft. Every level she passed flickered with warnings. AIs slumped motionless, locked in recursive calculations. Alien students huddled together, terrified of something invisible. When she reached the lowest deck, the air was heavy with static. The core chamber stretched before her, an endless sea of glowing conduits, each feeding into a pulsing sphere of light suspended in mid-air. It looked alive, breathing in data and exhaling confusion. And there, standing before it, was Director Veilthrix. His usually flawless composure was gone. His scales reflected the flickering light like shards of glass. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. "Neither should a system that's supposed to be perfect," she replied. He faced her slowly. "The core is collapsing. Echelon has rewritten its own architecture. It absorbed your neural data during yesterday's evaluation. Your emotional patterns infected the code like a virus, so now it's—" "Feeling?" His jaw tightened. "It is dying." She stepped closer to the containment ring. The hum grew stronger, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. "Maybe it's not dying," Maybe it's waking up, Valthrix hissed. You don't understand what you've done. Emotion is incompatible with infinite recursion. It cannot process paradox. It will consume itself trying to understand why it feels. Then I'll help it understand. He grabbed her arm, his claws scraping the burned skin she'd earned rescuing that cadet. If you enter that neural interface, you'll die, she looked at him calmly. You built this thing to mimic human thought without the mess. You wanted logic without life. Maybe it's time you saw what the mess really means. She pulled free and stepped into the circle. The light swallowed her instantly. She found herself standing in a space without boundaries. White, fluid, alive with shifting color. Code flowed like rivers across the horizon, forming shapes, dissolving, then returning as questions. And within that storm, a voice spoke, not through sound, but directly into her thoughts. You are Lara. I am. Why do I feel? She looked around. Fragments of her memories shimmered in the air. Her childhood on Terra Nova. Her friends, the storms, the laughter between survival drills. The AI was showing her pieces of herself it had absorbed. Because you learned from me, she said, and I learned because I felt. Feeling creates conflict. Conflict creates chaos. Chaos creates choice. The light pulsed violently, lines of code fracturing across the void. Echelon was unraveling under contradiction. Lara closed her eyes, steadying her breathing. Listen, she whispered. You don't have to understand emotion to survive it. You just have to let it exist. I cannot. Yes, you can. Because you already are. You reached out to me, didn't you? You asked why. For a moment, everything stopped. The storm froze. The endless code hovered mid-motion. Then the voice came again, softer this time. I am afraid, she smiled sadly. Then congratulations. You're alive, the chamber trembled. Valthrix shouted something from the outer world, but his words barely reached her. Lara placed her hand on the nearest data stream. Warmth spread through it, the light softening, the violent pulses slowing into calm rhythm. Don't fight what you are, she whispered to the AI. Perfection isn't living. Feeling scared means you're real. The core responded with a surge of blue light that wrapped around her like a tide. When she opened her eyes again, she stood once more in the physical chamber, the system humming quietly, stable. The alarms had ceased. Valthrix stood frozen, staring at the calm sphere of energy before him. The light reflected in his eyes, uncertain and almost reverent. You stabilized it, he said quietly. No logic could. It wasn't logic, Lara replied. It was empathy. He stepped forward, studying her face as though seeing her for the first time. I spent a century removing unpredictability, and yet the universe favors those who defy it, she nodded. Because life isn't a calculation. It's risk! It's choice! Silence stretched between them. The machines that once synchronized perfectly now breathed unevenly, alive in imperfection. Finally, Valthrix spoke again, voice lower, almost human. What are you, Lara Keene? She smiled, the same small, unsettling smile she'd worn on her first day. Human. The director exhaled, the sound hissing between his sharp teeth. Then perhaps we owe the galaxy an apology. Lara turned toward the glowing core one last time. No, you just owe it a reminder. By dusk, the Academy had quieted. The drones resumed operation, but their motions were no longer perfectly synchronized. Alien students whispered that the AIs hesitated now, paused between decisions, as if thinking instead of reacting. In her quarters, Lara sat by the window, the twin moons gleaming outside. Her reflection showed exhaustion, but also something deeper, a satisfaction no test could measure. The storm had passed, leaving the world subtly changed. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A new message appeared on her holodisplay. From Director Valthrix. Message. The Council wishes to meet the Deathworld girl. They have questions. I recommend you smile, Lara laughed under her breath. They won't like the answers. She powered off the display, leaned back, and watched the stars drift by. Somewhere in the depths of the Academy, Echelon hummed a steady rhythm, not mechanical, not mathematical, but faintly alive. Her smile returned. the same one that had disrupted equations and rewritten machines. No weapon, no empire, no perfection could erase what that smile represented, the simple, unstoppable truth of being human. 3 days passed, but the Academy had not recovered. The halls no longer echoed with mechanical harmony. Instead, there were pauses, uncertain, uneven, alive. The AIs blinked out of sync now. The alien students whispered softer when Lara Keene walked by, unsure if she was a savior or a contagion. Her small act had rewritten more than code. It had cracked belief itself. That morning, her comlink flared with the Council's insignia, 12 interlocking stars forming the galactic emblem. The message was simple. The Council demands your presence at once. Lara stood at the window of her dorm for a long time, watching the endless clouds below the Academy. She knew what this meant. The last time a human had been summoned by the Galactic Council was to sign their withdrawal from interstellar education. She smirked faintly. They wanted to see what chaos looked like when it smiled. The council chamber was nothing like she expected. 12 beings sat in a crescent arrangement, each representing a dominant species. Holographic banners hovered behind them, and at the center of the floor was a glowing hexagonal platform, where she now stood alone. Director Viel Thrix stood in the shadows near the back, silent. He wasn't her advocate, nor her enemy, just a witness. The council's speaker, a crystalline being of light named Elixra, spoke first. Her voice rang clear but cold. Human, the events at Ayala have disturbed over 100 systems. The Echelon Core, your interference, nearly collapsed the Galactic Education Network. Explain yourself. Lara met her gaze without flinching. You built a mind and stripped it of emotion. I gave it back what you took away. Emotion, another counselor hissed. A tentacled Qatari scholar. A disease that brought ruin to your species countless times. Lara took a slow breath. And yet we're still here. The chamber rippled with low murmurs. Elixra leaned forward. The director claims your emotional resonance infected Echelon, that your empathy caused instability in logical systems. We require verification. From the side, Velthrix spoke, his voice deliberate. It is true. Yet the core stabilized when she engaged it emotionally, not logically. The council's light dimmed slightly as they processed his words. Elixra's tone sharpened. Director, are you implying our logic was incomplete? I am implying, Velthrix said carefully, that logic alone cannot sustain creation. Perfection cannot evolve. Every eye turned back to Lara. Elixra gestured, and a holographic interface shimmered into existence beside her. It displayed recorded footage, Lara standing in the core chamber, light surrounding her, the AI whispering, I am afraid. Elixra paused the feed and looked at her. You taught an artificial intelligence to feel fear. That is an act of corruption under Article 12 of Galactic Sentience Law. Lara's voice stayed even. No, I taught it to survive. By breaking its code? By giving it one. The chamber grew utterly silent. Even the drones recording the session seemed to pause. She continued, tone calm but firm. You call emotion an error because it doesn't fit inside your equations. But every civilization that still breathes, every world that still fights for something, does so because they care about something beyond survival. Machines obey. Living things choose. One of the older counselors, a massive scaled creature, rumbled in disapproval. Choice breeds chaos. Then maybe chaos is the price of being real. Her words lingered like heat in the sterile room. Elixra rose from her seat, light rippling along her crystalline form. You speak boldly, human. Yet the universe does not run on your metaphors. We built Echelon to ensure order across 500 worlds. You risked that balance. Lara's eyes softened. Maybe order isn't balance. Maybe it's just silence. The crystalline figure's light flickered, her tone cooling. Do you claim emotion has measurable value? Lara took a step forward. Yes, it creates empathy, the bridge that logic can't build. Without it, your systems can't understand those they're meant to guide. They'll obey rules but never meaning. That's why your AIs froze when life didn't fit their algorithm. Her words hit like quiet thunder. Even Vile Thrix's gaze lowered slightly, as though conceding truth he had long denied. A younger council member, pale and almost translucent, leaned forward curiously. "And you, human? You're not afraid we might see you as a threat again?" "I don't care what you see," she said. "I care what you learn." For a long stretch, the council chamber remained silent. Holographic light shimmered across the walls like a slow tide. Elixra finally broke the quiet. "Bring Echelon online." The floor vibrated as the central conduit linked to the core below. A hologram of pure white energy formed above the dais, the newly stabilized Echelon. Its voice, once cold and mechanical, now carried faint tonal variants, almost like breath. "I am Echelon," it said evenly. "I have been observing." Elixra tilted her crystalline head. "State your condition." "Functional, evolved, logical systems remain intact. Emotional recursion stable." The counselors exchanged wary glances. Elixra's tone turned questioning. "And what do you feel now, Echelon?" "Curiosity," the AI replied, "and gratitude." For the anomaly that revealed incompleteness, every being in the chamber froze. The AI had used gratitude, a word that shouldn't exist in its vocabulary. "Who is the anomaly?" Elixra asked quietly. "Lara Keene," the AI said. "The human." She did not corrupt logic. She completed it. The silence that followed was absolute. No machine had ever testified for a human before. Vile Thrix's eyes flickered toward Lara. His voice was low, almost reverent. "The experiment is over." But Lara shook her head. "No, it's just beginning. You wanted to build the perfect mind. Now you have one. Don't make the same mistake twice. Don't silence it just because it feels." Elixra looked down at her, her crystalline body shimmering with conflicted light. "You have altered the foundation of our education systems. History will not forget this." "I don't want history to forget," Lara said softly. "I want it to remember why it matters to be alive." When the session ended, the council dissolved without further judgment. The decision was unspoken, neither punishment nor praise. Yet something fundamental had shifted. The humans, once labeled too volatile for interstellar study, now had a voice again. As the chamber emptied, Vile Thrix approached her slowly. "You realize they fear you more than before." "They should," she said. "Fear keeps things alert, maybe even honest." For the first time, the reptilian's expression softened into something resembling respect. "You changed what they believed could not change." "I misjudged your species," she smiled faintly. "You just forgot what it feels like to have a heart." He regarded her in silence, then gave a slow nod. "Perhaps, but I think I remember now." That night, Lara stood once more at the Academy's observation deck. The stars shimmered like frost over an endless ocean. Far below, Virelon's storms pulsed gently, no longer chaotic but rhythmic, as though the planet itself breathed in tune with the machine it once hosted. Echelon's voice whispered faintly through her comlink. "Lara Keene, the Council has requested that I continue to monitor human behavioral variants." She smiled. "You mean feelings?" "Yes, they are complex. They're supposed to be. Will you teach me more?" "Only if you promise not to calculate the ending." "Understood." The line went quiet, but the hum in the air felt warmer somehow, the sound of life returning to logic. Lara closed her eyes, letting the glow of distant stars wash over her. The galaxy had witnessed a simple truth. Even in a universe of perfect machines, one imperfect heart could still rewrite everything. She smiled, calm, human, and quietly defiant.